everyone, my name is Morgan and welcome to my very first YouTube video. So to start today off, I just want to walk you guys through a 10 to 15 minute completely all levels flow. And it's really just to kind of wake and warm the body up. So anyone and everyone is able to do this flow, and it shouldn't take you too long at all. You can do it as soon as you wake up in the morning, maybe before you go to bed at night. It's just gonna be really, really chill and feel good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in child's pose, and we're gonna spread the knees wide and bring the big toes to touch, and then start to crawl the hands out in front of you as you lay the hips back. So we're really looking to just melt the chest down towards the ground. Everything's getting really heavy and just relaxing down into your mat. And then start to tune into your breath here. Maybe let the belly fill up between the legs. Maybe close your eyes. Maybe keep them open. And just take some really big belly breaths. So go for 3 more inhales and 3 more exhales. On these last 2, start to maybe rock the hips side to side, just creating a little bit of movement, a little bit of wiggling, starting to wake the body up. And then on an inhale, we're going to ground down through the hands and rise up onto the hands and knees, coming into our tabletop pose. So what we're looking for here is to stack the shoulders over top of the wrist and the hips over top of the knees. So we can check in with that real quick. And we're in our tabletop pose, and we're looking in our core to pretend like we're zipping up a really tight pair of pants. So it's super easy here to kind of dip down and hunch down into everything, and we want to stay really strong in this pose. So pressing up through the shoulder blades, squeezing the core, think belly button to spine. And then we're going to start to work through some cat-cow. So on an inhale, dropping the belly, lifting the chest and the head. Exhale, cat, rounding through the upper back, bringing the chin to the chest. And then inhale back into cow. Exhale, cat. Really making sure you're moving with your breath. So even if it's not at my pace, that's okay. You can go at your own pace. And let's go for 2 more rounds of each. So again, inhaling into cow, exhaling into cat. And whenever you're finished with those, we'll meet back in that tabletop position, so that neutral spine. So coming back into tabletop, I'm going to start to warm up the spine a little bit more. So we're slowly going to really ground down into the left hand here. Raise the right hand out in front of you like you're reaching for something. And then maybe start to pick up that left leg and send it straight out behind you. You can either flex the toes or point them, but you want it to almost feel like you're getting pulled in 2 opposite directions here. So everything is nice and tight. We're sending energy out of the toes and the fingertips. Check in with that breathing. And then exhale back down to the ground. Awesome. So same thing on the other side. Left hand extends out in front of you. And then maybe we start to lift that right foot up off the mat. Maybe not. And that's okay too. If you need to keep both legs down and just work on extending the hands, that's perfectly fine. Again, whatever is lifted, just make sure that you're sending energy out of it. So you're reaching with the fingertips, pushing back with the toes. Exhale to release everything back down to the mat. 1 more time on each side. Inhale, hand out first. So right hand out, left foot back. And then keeping the spine really long here, we're just gonna bend the left knee and reach back with that right hand. Maybe see if we feel the toes. If you feel the toes, you can start to send the chest forward, kick the foot into the hand, Come into just a little bitty back bend, warming up the spine even more. And then exhale to release. Pull everything back out. And then down to the mat. So same thing on the other side. Left hand extends, right foot out. Everything's nice and long. We're really, really tight engaged through the core. And keeping that spine nice and long, start to bend the right foot. Reach back with the left hand. See if you can find the toes back there. And then maybe start to take that little back bend. So lifting the chest up, kicking the foot into the hand. Not going too far too soon. And then exhale, everything presses back out and down to the mat. Good. Spread the knees wide, press back into child's pose. Check back in with your breathing. And we'll do a little side body stretch. So walk the fingertips over to the left. See if you can reach that right hand a little bit further than the left hand. Relax the forehead down to the mat. Inhale back through center. And then exhale other side. So reaching that left hand just a little bit further than the right. Relax the forehead or maybe a cheek down to the mat, whatever is more comfortable. Walk the hands back to the center. Start to ground down through the palms. Inhale, tuck the toes. And we're gonna start to press back into our first downward dog. So sending the hips high, pressing up and out of the shoulders. Look in between the hands, make sure the biceps are spiraling forwards. So we're really externally rotating the shoulders here and pressing up out of them, staying really active. Pressing through all the knuckles in the hands, making sure we're not rolling onto the pinky side of the hand, but we're really pressing down through that index finger mound. And then start to see if you can consciously work the heels back down towards the mat. And if they don't touch right now, that's okay. We're just thinking about them getting there eventually. So maybe start to walk your dog out a little bit, create some movement. Good, and then coming back to center. On an inhale, we're gonna lift up the right leg and really open up here. So we're not worried about keeping the hips square right now. We're just opening everything up. And then bending that right knee, we're gonna start to stack that right hip on top of the left, really, really opening it up. Take a peek under your left armpit and maybe spot your right toes, maybe not. And then on an inhale, start to straighten out that right leg. Exhale, bring it down. Inhale, left leg floats up. Again, really just opening up through the hips here, so you can already start to think maybe stacking that left hip on top of the right. And then start to bend the left knee and stack even more. Really driving down through that left shoulder as we peek under the right armpit. Maybe look for the left toes. Check in with your breathing. Inhale, straighten the left leg back out. Exhale, float it all the way down. Inhale, start to shift forward. We're gonna come into our first high plank. Now, if this feels like it's a little bit too much, you can start to drop down to the knees. And so this is not quite tabletop. So you'll notice in tabletop, we keep the hips stacked over the knees and the shoulders over the wrists. But coming into a modified plank, you're gonna drop down and the hips are gonna be a little bit forward of the knees. All right, so notice the difference there if you are coming into modified plank. If not, we're gonna keep the knees lifted, stacking the heels over the toes, shoulders over top of the wrists, and then we're gonna push back into downward dog. So inhale, rolling forward into that high plank. Exhale, pushing back, downward dog. Inhale, rolling forward. Exhale, push back. Nice job, guys. One more time. Inhale, rolling forward, really, really starting to create some heat and some fire. Exhale, pushing back. Good. Drop the knees wide. Press back into your child's pose. So if the arms and wrists are feeling a little tired, you can always bring the knees in to touch and then let the arms rest alongside you. Sometimes feels really nice after you've been on your arms or your wrists for a little bit. Good. If your hands are alongside you, start to bring them out in front of you again. Inhale, tuck the toes. Exhale, press back, downward dog. Inhale, look in between the hands, and we're gonna take a really slow walk. So nice and slow, focusing on engaging the legs when we lift them, and then walking them as close as we can to our hands until we're in a standing forward fold. And from here, we're gonna grab opposite elbows and then just go into ragdoll. So we're letting everything get really heavy. You can see I'm letting my head relax so I have no wrinkles in the back of my neck. And then if you start to feel any pressure on your low back or maybe your hamstrings are feeling this a little bit, take a bend into the knees. Maybe sway side to side. Just let everything get nice and heavy. And then come back, find some stillness. Inhale, release the hands down to the ground, and we're gonna start to halfway lift here. So we're looking for length in the spine. So you can pretend that from your tailbone to the crown of your head, you're being pulled in two opposite directions. And if the fingertips need to come up onto the shins for you to find that length, that's totally fine. If you feel that you have some of the flexibility, you can start to walk the fingertips down to the ground, and maybe you're right here. Good, and then exhale, fold. Take a bend in the knees if you need to. Inhale, halfway lift, lengthen the spine. Exhale, fold. Now this time, inhale, rise all the way up, so keep that back nice and flat. Lift, lift, lift. Arms overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. So now we've found ourselves in Tadasana, or mountain pose. We're gonna look down, see that our feet are hips distance apart. If you're not quite sure what that is, you can normally take your fists together, bring them down in between your feet, and if they fit, that's a pretty good measurement that your feet are hips distance apart. So we found our mountain pose. We're gonna keep a little bit of buoyancy in the knees. Inhale, arms overhead. We're gonna work our way into our first sun salutation. Exhale, flat back, swan dive all the way down to the ground into our forward fold. Inhale, back into that halfway lift. Spine is nice and long. Exhale, plant the hands. Step back into that high plank, and we're going into our first Chaturanga, so we're gonna take this nice and slow. Again, if you need to modify, I encourage you to drop the knees, and as you shift forward, make sure that we're keeping the elbows stacked over the wrist, and then inhale, upward facing dog, shoulders are rolling down and away from the ears. Exhale, downward dog. Good, so we're gonna break that down just a little bit more. So in our Chaturanga, again, you have the option to drop the knees here. As you come down into your Chaturanga though, make sure that the elbows aren't way far behind the wrists. So when we drop the knees, we want to make sure that we're shifting far enough forward so that the elbows are stacked over the wrists as we lower. Same thing if you're coming into Chaturanga from a high plank. We're shifting forward so that the elbows stack over the wrists as we lower down, and then up into upward dog or cobra, okay? So we're gonna go through a sun sal one more time. Inhale, look in between the hands, slow walk all the way to the top of the mat, and we'll move through this one a little faster. Inhale, halfway lift, exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift, nice long spine. Exhale, plant the hands, step back into your plank, modify if you need to. Exhale, Chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog or cobra. Exhale, step the toes or roll over them. Downward facing dog. Drop the knees wide, press back into child's pose. Check in with your breathing. Inhale, tuck the toes, press back into downward dog. Walk the feet forward a bit and find yourself on your bum, and then work your way down onto your back. Walk the feet out to the edges of your mat, and then windshield wiper the knees just a few times to either side. Just releasing the spine a little bit. And then start to hug the knees into your chest. Give yourself a nice big squeeze. Thank yourself for getting on your mat today. And then exhale everything out, finding your way into corpse pose or shavasana. And you can stay here as long as you want. I encourage you guys to try and stay here for maybe at least 3 to 5 minutes. Close your eyes, let everything get really heavy, and just kind of enjoy the benefits of your practice.